Did that work? I think it did. Let's see. Hi, there we go. Hey, Internet. It's a little bit later than planned. I planned to be there for the actual premiere going live, but life gets in the way sometimes. So that being said, we are here about 25 minutes or so after the premiere has gone live on the WotC channel. That overall video on their end was about 24 minutes or so. Looks like the actual fighter video itself clocks in right around 20. They did set it as a premiere, so we are ready to watch that now. But yeah, I saw a lot of interesting comments, I'd say, on the live stream yesterday, and then even people commenting on the VOD about a bunch of stuff people were just completely unaware of, which I thought was interesting. There were a lot of people just unaware that, like, subclasses are going to be at 3rd level, for example. That was something that WotC had said they were going to go back and adjust to do that pretty early on. They had made that call. They had flip-flopped on all subclasses being 3rd level, and then they had said they were going to maybe go back to making it 1st level. But for quite some time, they've been dead set on subclasses happening at 3rd level regardless. But it's just interesting to me to see that how many people are unaware that that change was made, and they just totally missed that. So it does seem like there has been a decent amount of back and forth for what people actually remember what was going to happen. So anyway, that being said, we're going to get into this video in just a minute. Can I get a sound check from everybody in chat just to make sure it looks like I'm good? I just want to make sure that that's the case before we go ahead and dive in here. But everything looks to be working. So yeah, why don't we go ahead and pull up that video? Good. All right, awesome. Thank you, guys. Here it is. Here's the premiere of the video from WotC. We're going to go ahead and get started and see what they have to say about the fighter.
The fighter, in addition to being one of the most popular classes in 5th edition D&D, is also one of the oldest classes. This is the person who essentially you can put any weapon in their hand and they know how to use it, and they know how to use it well. And if you look at the new player's handbook, the fighter and I think the ranger, they are sort of neck and neck in just the number of brand new features that they get in this book.
Right.
All the baseline goodies are still there: extra attack and it increasing, action surge, etc. This is just how much that is brand new in the fighter.
Right.
That is being joined with the features that the class had before. First off, of course, weapon mastery, brand new.
We know that.
Also, fighters now get a feature called Tactical Mind, which
I'm pretty sure this was in the Unearthed Arcana Tactical Mind.
Allows them to expend uses of their second wind when they fail an ability check to roll a die, add it to that check, and try to turn their failure into a success. Now, we were able to introduce this new feature because we also enhanced Second Wind so that fighters can now use it more often than they used to be able to.
Right.
And as fighters go up in level, their number of Second Wind uses increases, which means not only do they now have more uses to use on their self-healing, which is what Second Wind could do previously, but now they can also use it on Tactical Mind to try to turn, again, failed ability checks into successful ones.
So, Kendall, you bring up Battlemaster. I don't think you're going to see any changes to Battlemaster, really. Based on what they showed us in the Unearthed Arcana, Battlemaster remains largely unchanged. They can just do more things because of the change to Weapon Mastery being added to the game. And I do want to comment on this Tactical Mind thing. I really like it because I do feel like, and it's not 100% of the case, but I mean, maybe you guys have a different experience, but the fighter, they're a one, not necessarily, but more or less a one-trick pony, right? They hit stuff. That's their thing. So you may find yourself as a fighter having kind of being kind of pushed into that one lane. Like, you're not going to be the skill monkey typically if you're the fighter, because your job is to hit stuff. But little changes like that, like tactical mind, allowing the fighter to now be able to re-roll a failed ability check, which is also something to consider, right? It's not like make a roll with advantage, it's to re-roll a failed ability check, which is nice because that failed ability check means that you obviously know you are going to lose if or fail this check, so you're just getting to turn that one potentially into a success with the use of second wind. And then again, the increased uses of second wind is really nice. I actually played around with this at one point with my version of trying to fix the Purple Dragon Knight from Sword Coast Adventures Guide, was giving more uses of second wind and then having second wind be expendable to do other things. So it's nice to see that that has arrived, because again, it is a little bit of self-healing and now a little bit of a role play aspect, and having more uses of that is pretty nice. I don't know what the final use count looks like. I'd probably go for something pretty close to proficiency bonus times per long rest, so you'd cap out at 6. That might seem like a lot, but it's not a huge amount. It's a little bit of self-healing. Being able to use that on turns back to back is also really nice, to be able to get some more health if you're down pretty low. And then again, obviously the failed skill checks is also really nice. And so Firefan saying only uses tactical mind, only uses the second wind if it turns it into a success. Also, you still get second winds back on a short rest, so you still have that much more usability as well.
And that's very much on theme with fighters. Like, they persevere, and it may not just be to like heal up and get into the fight again. It may be to, like, you're trying to grasp for something, or you're trying to do this one thing with the last bit of strength in you.
Absolutely. And also, tactical mind is part of our effort to give the fighter
Here it is, what I was just saying, basically,
some special capability in situations that might not be combat.
Right.
Most of the fighters' abilities are naturally combat-oriented. It's in the name. Yeah. They're all about fighting. But nonetheless, we, in every class, as we revisited it for the new player's handbook, made sure that every class had something that they could bring to the table also outside combat. And so tactical mind is a big option there, again, at level 2. At level 5, they get tactical shift. Now, this allows them, whenever they use their second wind as a bonus action to regain hit points, to also move up to half their speed without provoking opportunity attacks. We want
another really useful ability, and this is an always-on thing, and that's whenever you use your second wind. So you can use it for heal. So maybe you're in a bad spot, right? You want to heal, you get half your movement speed, and it doesn't provoke attacks of opportunity, and you still get the heal. And reminder that that's a bonus action. So you could also bonus action heal, and then maybe you're not even near any enemies at all, right? So there's a couple ways to think about this. One would be like you're getting beat up pretty hard and you need to get out. You use the second wind to get the heal as your bonus action, and then you move away without provoking attacks of opportunity. Reminder again, bonus action to do that movement. Then you still have your movement and you still have your action. So if you really need to get away, you can then get that. Say your movement speed's 30 feet, pretty standard. Move 15 feet away. Movement speed another 30 feet away. Action dash another 30 feet beyond that, which is pretty crazy to get that much utility just off of a bonus action with tactical shift. But also, you could be, maybe you down the enemy and now your healer is being hurt and you want to get closer and you're not even worried about the lack of opportunity attacks. You're just using it for an extra 15 feet of movement. And again, that's just an always on thing. One thing I'd have to truly see is how the things are written to see, like, it's maybe they'll explain it here in a second, but because tactical shift is when you use your second wind, can tactical shift be activated on a use of tactical mind, right? I fail an ability check, I want to re-roll that ability check using tactical shift. Does that technically count as an expended use of second wind, therefore allowing me to move 15 feet without provoking attacks of opportunity? If it works that way, which in my mind it definitely should, that's really good synergy all around. Let's see, what do you guys have to say over here? Yes, Jordan, we should absolutely. We'll hang out at Gen Con for sure, if not sooner than that. No, tactical shift is level 2 because fighting. I think you get second wind at level 1. Tactical mind, I think, is level 2. Tactical shift, the movement ability we're talking about, that's at level 5. They just said that. Chris Lewis in the chat, are you still able to use Tasha's or Xanathar subclasses with the 2024 PHB? For instance, they said all subclasses now get subclasses at level 3. So yes, we're going to do a whole video on this once all the books are officially allowed to be talked about past embargoes and whatnot. But what they covered yesterday is that when you're playing, you can play at a table with 2024 characters and 2014 characters. So the rules, the base rules, the combat, the spells, all of that stuff, in an instance where that's happening, you are going to use the 2024 book. I'm going to make a separate video on just this based on what we heard officially yesterday, because it's worth making that video because so many people have questions about it. The 2024 rules, combat spells, all that stuff, that is your new core rule set that you will be using. You can play with a 2014 character at a 2024 table, but you can't play with a 2024 character at a 2014 table. It doesn't work that way because of just the changes in the nomenclature and things like that. It can get a little wonky. I mean, you probably could figure it out pretty easily. But yes, you should be able to play, in theory, with a 2014 subclass on a 2024 class. They did say that the player's handbook will have language in it that will kind of for like the character creation section, it will have a section that kind of details what things need to change to kind of keep things in parity. I think the biggest one is, again, giving the 2014 characters a feat at first level, because backgrounds don't do that in 2014. They do in 2024. So this is a way to kind of keep things in parity. The question that you're bringing up, though, is like, again, a warlock or a cleric or a sorcerer get their subclasses at first level in 2014. Could I truly play one of those on a 2024 class, and how does that work? That we'll have to truly see in the, what's defined there, but also be on the lookout that once these books officially go live, I'll be doing my best to go through and make a series of like updating 2024 or 2014 to take all of the subclasses and things that didn't make it into the 2024 books, to do my best to have them updated and in power line with power-wise rather, the 2024 version. So I'll have all those. And because, again, I'm sitting on a copy of the book at the moment, I can make all those videos in advance. So once these things go live, you guys can just get them all throughout the day for weeks on end until we're done covering the player's handbook. So no new 2024 Tempest Cleric then. That is correct. We'll have to make an update for one. So I will do that when the time comes. Tempest Cleric is my personal favorite cleric, so you know that I'm going to treat it with the proper respect that it deserves. So at the very least, Tempest Cleric fans, be on the lookout for that video sometime in September. Let's get back to covering the fighter.
Wanted fighters as the battlefield tacticians to have a bit of an easier time moving around the battlefield, especially when they're in danger. And so that's why this is connected to Second Wind, that those times where the fighter is like, uh-oh, we want the fighter to be able to tactically reposition themselves, whether they need to do that to save themselves or move themselves into a better position to protect their allies, because some fighters are built as tanks, but then other fighters are built as archers, as skirmishers. Part of the beauty of the class is that you can build a fighter to fill many different tactical roles. Level 9, they get Tactical Master. You can see a theme here, since each of these new features has the word tactical in it. We have Tactical Mind, Tactical Shift, and now Tactical Master.
This is level 9.
Tactical Master at level 9 lets the fighter, whenever they are using a weapon and are using that weapon's mastery property, lets them replace that property when they strike with the weapon with the push, sap, or slow mastery properties, which basically means the fighter always, once they reach level 9, always has those 3 mastery properties in their pocket.
Yeah.
And so whatever mastery property is on the weapon they're using.
Okay, so that is a change. And I think that they kind of covered it in the weapon masteries yesterday. but it sounds like they removed all of the. If you look at the, was it Unearthed Arcana 7? I think was the last one we got for classes. They had given them all prerequisites, right? Where it said like you can use this only on heavy weapons or light weapons or two-handed versatile weapons, whatever it is, right? So it looks like they've ditched that thing that now weapons just have a property, whatever that is, right? So longbow is slow and heavy crossbow is push or whatever it is. Because the fighter used to have an ability in the Unearthed Arcana that allowed them to, and I think that's what they're calling it. They're calling it tactical mastery here. I think they said at level 8 or 9. They used to have that ability that basically allowed them to replace the property, the weapon mastery property on any weapon they used with any other weapon mastery property that it qualified for. So, right, like if you had a great sword had graze and a maul had push, but the things that graze listed as its property choices, you could then put graze on the maul kind of thing, or however that worked, right? Now it seems like they've done away with that in favor of just giving the fighter access to 3. So let's just confirm that one more time.
Replace that property when they strike with the weapon with the push, sap, or slow.
Okay. So whatever weapon you're using, whether that be a bow, a musket, a pistol, a dagger, whatever you are using as the fighter, when you hit whatever we said this was, level 8 or 9, when you get tactical mastery, when you actually connect with that weapon, you can replace it with push, sap, or slow. I'm going to go ahead and pull up in the meantime while we talk about this, just the most recent Unearthed Arcana to see what. Now, again, we might have slight differences. Or was it playtest 8 was the last one? Yeah, playtest 8 was the last one. I kept saying 7. If we pull up the weapon mastery from playtest 8, which there's no guarantee that what we're seeing here will be exactly the same in the printed book, but we haven't heard anything different. So let's go ahead and take a look at this. So this is playtest 8. And you can see, again, all of them have this. But if you look at this, see how they all had property prerequisites here? Sounds like they've removed these because now the fighter can use the sap. Was it sap? Push, sap, or slow. So push is a 10-foot knockback if they're large or smaller. Now, reminder, there is no saving throw on push. It is just a 10-foot push back if they're large or smaller. Sap is that creature has disadvantage on its next attack roll before the start of your next turn. And slow is you reduce their movement speed by 10 feet until the start of your next turn. If you hit the creature more than once with this property, the speed reduction doesn't exceed 10 feet. Now, there's some leeway to be had here, right? This says if you hit the creature more than once with this property, the creature's reduction doesn't exceed 10 feet. The way I read this is that if I hit it with 10 feet speed reduction, it's 10. Like if I hit it 4 times, it's still only 10 feet. But the way that that's written seems like that if you were to hit it on your turn with a slow feature, we possibly could lock them down to negative 20 feet. Now, I don't know if this terminology is going to be changed in the final print where it's just listed that like they can only have their speed reduced by 10 feet period across the board per turn, or it allows you to stack that effect. And then again, push. Reminder, again, like I said, larger, smaller, no saving throw. But now as a fighter, any weapon can have push. Or, again, sap or slow. But some of these are really interesting, like, say, the longbow, right? The longbow could now have push. Now, a lot of people will look and say, oh, the heavy crossbow already has it. Reminder that they do have the loading property, which I do feel like a lot of people forget about how the loading property works with crossbows. So having it on something like a longbow where there's no slowdown on your ability to shoot multiple arrows or things like that. So again, you could be firing 3 arrows a turn and knock some larger, smaller creature back 30 feet in a turn. And it doesn't have any language that says like they must be able to stand on what you knock them back to. So you could just keep firing and shoot somebody off a ledge. Or again, knock them back with a hammer or a sword. Again, pretty standard would be a long sword. Normally the long sword has sap, but you could then add slow or push. And again, just think about, I mean, I'm not going to go too much into it because we'll be here forever, but the tactical abilities you could do, we'll just use, again, standard sword and board fighter, you're using a long sword. Your level 8 fighter, level 9, whatever it is, you have tactical mastery. You hit them with your long sword, you now use the slow property, cutting their movement speed by 10 feet. You could then, in between attacks, use second wind to heal yourself up from some damage you took, pop in tactical shift from level 5, use your ability to move 15 feet away from that enemy you just pushed back without provoking attacks of opportunity, and then move further away, and now because of their reduced movement speed, they can't even get to you on your next turn. There's so many weird ways you can build this in. And normally when I think of like a tactically minded individual in a combat, I typically picture a wizard. Because I'm thinking, again, we're talking intelligence, we're kind of analyzing the battlefield, what kind of spells can I do, and all this. But it's really shifting the fighter more into very much that tactically minded aspect. And they're doing a good job at that, I think, by saying like, okay, I can knock this person back 10 feet, then I can slow this person, move away, and really just craft the battlefield the way you want to do it by combining weapon mastery properties and your movement capabilities. So I'm really enjoying what they're doing with this. Again, like I said, fighter has never been a class I was ever really interested in because I didn't think it had enough to interest me. And maybe that's just me being naive, but like I've said, when I go to play like a big, strong person hitting something, I usually lean towards Paladin because I have the versatility of spells, I have Fine Steed, I have Smiting, I have Healing, I have a lot of stuff going, auras, stuff going for me that like gives me a lot of options in combat or otherwise that would keep my interest. Whereas I always felt like Fighter felt, again, previously so much like I hit stuff, which is fine if that's what you want to do, but it wouldn't give me enough tactical like options in combat. And it seems like they really are pushing the other way to make Fighter one of the classes I'm actually pretty interested in giving a shot in a game just because I've never done it, and I think this new version of it could be a lot of fun. Correct, Ant Cantone. Slow and then extra attack to push them away. Let's see. It also stacks with maneuvers. Yes, correct. If you're playing a Battle Master, it should stack with your maneuvers as well. And again, something that a lot of us, obviously Fighter has some versatility in the tactical mastery, allowing you to tack on push, sap, or slow. But it also gives you a reason to carry multiple weapons. How many of us have played in games where you've like, oh, well, you've got like this person's the weapon master, but they only ever use like the great axe because it does the most damage or what have you, right? Now there's a reason to carry even something as simple as like the long sword versus the battle axe, right? The long sword has sap and then could have slow or push, but the battle axe has topple, which is an ability to knock prone. And that is something that even with battle or tactical mastery, you won't have access to. But now your battle axe could have topple, sap, slow, or push at level 8 or 9, whatever it is. And then again, looking at topple, that's a saving throw to knock somebody prone. But again, there is no size limit on the saving throw to knock somebody prone. As long as you hit them, they make the con save or get knocked prone. So you could be knocking a gargantuan creature prone, and I'm pretty sure the rules state that if you knock a flying creature prone, they fall to the ground. So you could do all sorts of crazy stuff by knocking stuff, toppling things, jumping off, hitting something, knocking it prone. A lot of crazy options there. Let's see. This absolutely makes Fighter a lot more tactical and supportive without taking away the offensive capabilities. Correct. That's the crux, I think, of this design, is it's making them still very good at what they are good at, supposed to be doing, fighting, but also adding tactical options to them, which is very nice. Joshua Chapman, sorry I'm late. If you talked about the classes losing the Artificer and a lot of the subclasses aren't being released later, there is no comfort. They have confirmed, soft confirmed. I'll see if I can't get anything out of them when I meet with them at Gen Con. But they have soft confirmed that the Artificer will be coming in a future book. It does seem to me, it was originally, obviously, as we know, very Eberron focused, but then they made it a kind of a base release in Tasha's Cauldron. There's obviously also been a lot of discourse, I feel like, in the community around Artificers and whether or not they belong in Dungeons and Dragons. I might make a separate video on that. Just, I know I'm a little late to the party on that, but my thoughts are, again, as I've said, the biggest follow-up to what I imagine will be quite successful release of your 2024 core rulebooks should be whatever you want to call it. I'm going to call it Player's Handbook 2. They will never do that, but that's what I'm going to call it. Player's Handbook 2. And what you include in Player's Handbook 2 is the Artificer as a class updated in line with 2024. And then every single subclass that was left behind from Xanathar's, Tasha's Cauldron, Sword Coast Adventures Guide, the 2014 Player's Handbook, all of those subclasses that didn't get the 2024 treatment in the Player's Handbook, all of those, put them in one new book and update them to the quality of 2024, along with the Artificer, maybe even tack on a new Artificer subclass. And honestly, you probably don't have to do much more than that. Based on the number of spells that they're saying, it sounds like a lot of the supplemental spells that were released in other books, it sounds like those have been updated and added into the base Player's Handbook. So like, you're not gonna, I mean, you can obviously develop new spells. No one's gonna complain about new spells, but it sounds like most of that stuff's gonna be like, the extra stuff is gonna be either included in the Dungeon Master's Guide or in the 2024 Player's Handbook. So the best follow-up seller that you could make a ton of money would be saying, hey, we recognize you out there, fan of the Tempest Cleric, or you know, fan of the Necromancy Wizard, or, you know, the Swashbuckler, or the Sun Soul Monk. All these things that people like that got left behind and didn't get the update for the 2024 Player's Handbook. We're going to compile all of those into one new book and release that to you, so everything now is in parity. You have all of the stuff updated for 2024. And then from there, you start developing new stuff. And then everything, and then basically that's it, right? You buy the 3 core rulebooks and what I'm calling the Player's Handbook 2. And now you've got all of your options. Oh, Player's Handbook 2 also has all of the, we're now calling them species, all of the species that you didn't update in the 2024 Player's Handbook, they get packed in there. And that's the whole book. It's all those new subclasses, the Artificer, and all of the species updated for 2024, compiled into one book. That's your second book, and then whatever comes out in the future is all brand new content. And that's like a simple thing. You already done most of the work there because it's already been established. You just need to tweak it and make it, you know, play test it to make it equal what you have in 2024. And like, that feels like a layup for you, right? Like, we're giving you, you have the stuff, just update it, and people are going to go out and buy that, because then also, if people are very much stuck in like an editionist mindset where like, I don't want to do this whole 2024, 2014. If you were to do that, then you basically have said 4 books and you're caught up. Everything else is new. Seems like a no-brainer to me. Joshua Chapman, that's up to you, right? You can live. Do I think it's fair? I mean, I've lived through editions. Multiple people here have lived through more editions than I have. If you can either stay in the edition that you like, and that's it, and that's fine. No one's going to complain about that, right? There are people out there still playing second edition just as if nothing has released since then, and that's fine, right? I started playing 3rd and 3.5. 4th edition came out. I didn't stop playing 3rd and 3.5. I didn't like 4th edition, so I just kept playing what I liked. 2014 5th edition came around. A lot of people jumped on board with that. If you don't like what they're doing in 2024, don't play it. It's hard to say, right, where you're going to be at with this, because you already have it. So, I mean, if you want to go the mindset of I already have it, then don't buy the 2024 Player's Handbook, because you technically already have it. Everything, with the exception of a couple of things that were released in like some of the additional subclasses, there are a couple of new subclasses, brand new, like 3 brand new ones in the 2024 Player's Handbook. I think it's the College of Dance Bard, the Sea Sorcerer, and the World Tree Barbarian are brand new subclasses that don't exist anywhere else. So if you're looking to get 3 brand new subclasses, that's where they're contained. But it's hard to say. You can't please everybody. That's the other thing, right? We know this. You do anything on the internet, you're going to piss somebody off. So yeah, you could make the argument that you buy these new core rule books and you don't do a Player's Handbook 2, but then it's going to fall on you or your DM to look at how they're going to take that swashbuckler class from 2014 or whenever it was officially released and update it to fall in line with 2024, or you're just going to live in the 2014 version. You're going to play a 2014 version of the swashbuckler rogue. I could play a 2024 version of the thief rogue, and I'm going to have all these other cool new options because I'm playing that version of the rogue, whereas you're playing a 2014 version of rogue. The biggest one I'm going to say is probably going to come up the most is the paladin. I think we can all agree that based on what we saw in the last Unearthed Arcana, they have put a pretty heavy nerf hammer on smiting, right? And this is supposed to be a video about the fighter, but we're really going off on a tangent. But that's what you guys are here for, so here we go. We talked about the Paladin. We've seen it in the most recent Unearthed Arcana. The biggest shift is that they changed Divine Smite to be a spell. And worse off, in my opinion, Divine Smite is a spell and it eats your bonus action. When you hit something with a attack, you use your bonus action to use the spell Divine Smite to deal extra damage, which therefore, because it's a spell, means it can only be applied once per turn. But it also eats your bonus action to do the smite, which seems stupid to me. It should be, if you're going to make it eat anything, make it eat your reaction. But that's going to be one thing that I could definitely see people being like, I'm going to play a 2014 Paladin. Yeah, I don't have Lay on Hands as a bonus action or whatever other stuff that Paladins get nowadays, but I'd rather have Smites the way I had Smites before because it's stronger. So that is a thing I definitely could see, but I mean, I'll mention whatever I can to WotC at Gen Con. I can't promise things are gonna an expansion to the Player's Handbook. What was the point of Monsters of the Multiverse? Well, it was to update all of the old subclasses that they'd had, or all the old races that they had, to be in line with the newer races that they released. They might line up perfectly, but for example, everything we've seen from every new species in the Player's Handbook, none of those species give anybody basically access to weapon or armor proficiencies, for example. I'm pretty sure some of the races in Monsters of the Multiverse still grant like weapon or armor proficiencies. Not saying that needs to be the case 100%, but it seems like they're kind of going away from the concept of you being like inborn species wise having access and the capability to use like a bow or a sword. So we might see updates to things, because I think wasn't Goliath and Azamar in Monsters of the Multiverse as well? And now those have been updated to now be different in a different version in the 2024 Player's Handbook. I mean, Dragonborn were updated in Fizzbands and then updated again in the 2024, Player's Handbook. So we're not opposed to re-updating things. So I could see your point about Monsters of the Multiverse, but I think we're kind of leaning towards like, everything should get a 2024 pass, because I think the Monsters of the Multiverse came out in that weird time frame. It might be fine that everything is just one-to-one, easy to use and update. But for example, ability score improvements in the 2020 or in the Monsters of the Multiverse, ability score improvements were still tied to your race. They gave you options to how you could choose +2 to +1 or +1 to 3. But now in 2024, those numbers are tied to your background. Does that then change and allow you to put more power in the species / race? Possibly. So these are things that might need to be considered when you go to do an update. Our downtime action is going to be in the PHB. I'm assuming the Dungeon Master's Guide. We haven't heard much about it, Warren, outside of Bastions, which will be in the Dungeon Master's Guide. It is level 3 on all subclasses. Yes, that's been confirmed for a while in the Unearthed Arcana. 100% confirmed as true from these recent videos. Yeah, I mean, they did say Mordenkainen was to work with 2024, so I don't disagree with you. And it might, but there's already things we're calling out that are different there. Yeah, correct. It's not 6th edition. It's an update. Just like 3.5 wasn't a new edition, it was an update to 3.0. Just like Pathfinder 2E's got a remaster, which technically isn't a new edition, but it is. I mean, we could split hairs on edition language as much as you want, but fundamentally, it's a refresh, re-update to the rules, a revision, if you will, but it is still a newer version. Things are adjusted, right? It's the sim. I'm going to shut my door because I can hear my the vacuum going upstairs. But yeah, like I said, you can definitely have people. We've seen this happen, right? There's precedents. I should probably just turn this back to me instead of leaving it on this because we've been talking for a while. There is precedence for this concept of like a new edition that isn't a new edition. It happens, right? I mean, it's even something as simple as like you could release an errata that changes stuff. And I've talked about this before too, right? If you're playing with the 2014 Player's Handbook that released in 2014, it's drastically different than if you were to go out and buy the Player's Handbook right now off the shelf in 2024. There are massive differences in that book. Like, for example, Beastmaster Rangers attacks, their animal companions' attacks become magical at a point. That's not in the 2014 Player's Handbook. It's in newer versions of the 2014 Player's Handbook. But like, there's updates like that. If you didn't go and download the errata to know that that was changed or buy a new or recent printing, you wouldn't know that either. Which then you can be getting into subsections of printing levels within the same edition. So again, I'm not trying to be combative or fight the question here, but it's essentially embrace the new stuff, the updated version of 5e. They're still sticking with 5e. I don't know, like, would this change people's opinion and make them happier if they just decided to call it something new, give it a new name as opposed to just leaving it as 5e? That might be all it is people just need to call it by another name. I mean, like I've said before, it's kind of like when you have a movie that releases later on and they keep the same name as the original movie. So you need to know, like, is this going to be like, Rocky 1985 versus Rocky, 2020, or Ghostbusters 1984 versus Ghostbusters 2016, right? People are just, it's the same name. That's obviously a little bit different because movies are different, but you're just denoting it by the year. So I don't know. Maybe they should have just called it something different, but they also didn't want to lose the name recognition of 5th edition, something that they've grown and has become quite popular. Let's see. Boy, that was a tangent. I'm sorry, guys. If they update and re-release Xanathar's Guys, Tasha's Gulch, and Eberron, I won't mind. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Just kind of combine those into like one book. Yeah, it is kind of funny that they released the Dance Bard, which is basically a better monk than a monk. I in a lot of ways, I think so. I mean, I don't think they should have nerfed Aura of Protection. I think Aura of Protection was fine. I think a lot of people thought that it stacked, and that was definitely proved in an errata that Paladin auras of the same type do not stack. So you couldn't like multi-stack Aura of Protection. So I think Aura Protection's fine. It's a powerful ability. It also makes you want to be close to the Paladin, which could potentially be detrimental depending on the situation if the Paladin's going in for combat a lot. I think all smites have become features rather than the one non-spell smite being a spell. We'll have to see what the final version is, but last we saw for the paladin, it was basically every smite was all the smites were smite spells, which therefore limited you to once a turn because again you can only cast one spell a turn. Does this mean if you hit with a graze weapon, you can replace it with push, sap, or slow instead of graze only working on a miss? Topher Robeson, I don't think that's the intention because you're not actually hitting with the weapon. You're hitting with the weapon mastery property in that aspect. If you have a feature that triggers off of dealing damage, potentially that would work with the graze feature. Yeah, Indy Fox says you're still going to be running that paladin. Yeah, I think we might all land on like a hybrid, which is I think where we'll likely end up is we'll call it like, it'll be like the 5e hybrid paladin, which is like a kind of mishmash of both of them. Taking like, so you can't make it all good. That's the other thing, right? You can't take all of the best parts of the 2024 paladin and all of the best parts of the 2014 paladin. Yeah, you can, right? Now, I can't tell you you can't do that. You absolutely can run that like that at your table. But I think you're going to have to do some balancing, right? Shifting subclass. Well, subclass was always 3rd level for paladin anyway. But like some adjustments, I think, make some sense there. Kind of find a nice happy medium middle ground. Maybe it's Divine Smite is still a spell, or maybe it's limited to once a turn. That way, you know, you don't have to limit it to cast using a spell, which then also technically, although counterspell is different in this version of it anyway, you could counterspell Divine Smite, which you normally wouldn't be able to do, because technically if it's a spell, you could counterspell it. So I think there's definitely going to be a happy medium, right? I like the option of making Lay on Hands a bonus action. I like the changes they made to like Divine Sense. Cool adjustments overall. So I think we got to find a little middle ground in between. And that might be where we all land on like what's like the fan version of the 5e Paladin, like the one that everybody agrees on. Because there's stuff like that, right? We talked about it yesterday with potions as a bonus action. Potions are now a bonus action in base 5e Player's Handbook because of the fact that so many people do potions as a bonus action. That's just kind of become the accepted rule. And then so much so that WotC made that the rule for the game. We might all start adopting a new version of the Paladin, so much so that that kind of just becomes the fan-accepted version of the Paladin. Yes, Alexander Best, they did. It was a while ago. All subclasses are 3rd level. They've talked about that for a while. That's 100% the case. Paladin video is tomorrow, yes. Paladin video might be Friday. We have Barbarian and Paladin somewhere in the next 2 days. Yes, taking the 2014 Paladin would mean you're giving up the weapon mastery property. That is true. They did say they updated all the stat blocks for everything to be... it's like a new version of all stat blocks. So we haven't really seen those yet anywhere, so we'll have to see about that. No, they didn't say it was going to be forward compatible. They said 5e was going to be... This new stuff is going to be backwards compatible. I don't know if they said that officially about Mordenkainen's Monsters of the Multiverse, that it was going to be forwards compatible. I think they said it was going to be more in line. I'd have to check officially if there was some like video or language out there that they said. And if anybody finds that and wants to link it to me, go ahead. Let's see. No one's breaking your house, stealing the books you own. Is pipeweed in this new book? Don't know. No, the WotC video is not done. We've just been on a crazy tangent at the moment. We're going to go back to that in a minute, I promise. Yeah, we'll go back to the video. Listen, you guys know how my videos go. This is a 20-minute video. We're going to turn it into 2 hours.
Mastery properties.
Oh, wait. My headset turned off because there was no video or no audio coming through it in that time frame. Give me 1 sec. Get this playing in just a sec.
which basically means the fighter always, once they reach level 9, always has those 3
9 is
mastery
technical
properties
mastery.
in their pocket.
Yeah.
And so whatever mastery property is on the weapon they're using, they always know, okay, if in a pinch I need one of those other 3 mastery properties, I can invoke it. And this is a replacement of a feature we experimented with in Unearthed Arcana that was
talked about
allowing
this.
fighters to completely switch which mastery properties were on their weapons. We found that not only was that not super popular in the UA series, but it was also on the back end in our development creating a number of headaches for the system down the line. So that is no longer present. Instead, we felt both in our development and in our playtesting, it was far more preferable and fun to just give the fighter these 3 properties that the fighter could just say, nope, I'm going to use this one now, regardless of what the mastery property is on the weapon that I'm using.
Again, being obsessed with the Battlemaster, all of those weapon mastery abilities for those weapons can stack and layer on to your battle maneuvers all at the same time.
Yes.
So there are some really juicy combinations. If you're a Battlemaster, you're using a maneuver, you can use an additional effect from that weapon. And now you have this massive toolbox of combinations that you've never had before.
Exactly. So the Battle Master's mini game of deciding which maneuver to use at any point just became an even more intricate mini game because you're figuring out which maneuver to use paired with which weapon mastery.
If you want to like stack, pushing an opponent a little bit with one of your maneuvers, and then also stacking the weapon mastery to push an opponent even further, you can get up to some really nasty business.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
At level 13, the fighter gets to feature.
Just wanted to comment on that for people talking about Battlemaster. That's a great example, right? Pushing attack or shoving attack plus the push weapon mastery all works. And again, like we said, you could put that on a bow. So you could be shoving attack and push weapon mastery on a bow to just launch people crazy amounts of distance from a distance. So we can get into some pretty crazy options there.
That I've actually been wanting to give fighters for years called studied attacks. And this gives the fighter advantage on their next attack roll against a target if they miss them. With this idea, again, of fighters being the battlefield masters, like they're sizing up their opponent.
Yeah.
And you can imagine it's the fighter more than anyone else of like, well, I missed you this time, but I just figured out something about you. And so I'm gonna have a better chance of hitting you next time.
Right.
And
all right, can we talk about that for a second? If the fighter misses, I think they said at 11 or 13, if the fighter misses within an attack, they just get advantage on the next attack they have. And I think they said this was at 13, which means that you have 3 attacks at that point. So miss with an attack, get advantage on the next attack. You throw an action surge in there with you basically can auto-generate yourself advantage just by missing. There is so much that is so good. It's so simple and clean, and it's just like and that's base fighter. Can we remind everybody that this is just base fighter? We haven't even gotten to subclasses yet. We're talking base fighter can just auto-trigger advantage for themselves on a miss. That's huge. And also remember, that miss could still deal damage with a weapon that has the graze property. So if you have a weapon with graze, you can miss, still do some minimal amount of damage, and then give yourself advantage on the next attack. We're not even getting into the territory of what craziness you could do with multi-classing with 13 levels in fighter to then get auto-triggering sneak attack or whatever else with multiple attacks with this ability at level 13. That's pretty wild. Yeah, it looks like tough and athlete. Those are still character side, like class side, level wise, based on your level. Yeah, oh, that's true. Also not including the Vex property, which allows you to get advantage on the next attack you make against somebody. So you have like crazy, you can like basically almost guarantee yourself advantage on at least one, if not all of your attacks, depending on how you go about this. And I like the lore implications that they're getting at here, right? Like, I'm a tactically minded person. I missed you, and in missing that, I learned something about you. So now I figured out how to better increase my chances of hitting you next time.
And you can see this sort of starting to snowball.
Also to Jimmy, to your point, yeah, I'd love to interview Dan. Dan's a good friend. I like Dan a lot. I don't know what he's allowed to say, but if we could talk about it, I will definitely reach out and see if he wants to do an interview.
And can be a lot of fun. Fighters then at level 19 also get a new feature that all classes now get at level 19 that replaces the ability score improvement that they had at that level, and it is the Epic Boon feature. And this is the feature that unlocks for fighters, as well as every other class who gets this feature, the ability to choose an Epic Boon feat. Now, the fighter, like everyone else, also has the option of choosing a non-Epic Boon feat at this level. It's just like when you choose, or rather when you're given ability score improvement, you have the option of taking that or another feat. Same here with Epic Boon. But I think you're going to want to choose the Epic Boon feat, because the Epic Boon feats, they not only include an ability score increase in them, but that increase can go past the normal maximum of 20.
Yeah.
And they include abilities that really go beyond what feats can normally do. And there's a reason why these feats are not available until 19th level. Like one of them, just as an example, and it's particularly relevant to the fighter's interests, is one of the Epic Boon feats is called the Boon of Combat Prowess, which allows you, when you miss, to just decide you hit. And you can do this. You can do this only once per turn, but my goodness, is that good?
Yeah.
And
once per turn, nah, I hit. It's pretty wild. Given the fact that you also have this advantage, you're just going to be hitting constantly.
the Epic Boon feats, there's another one where you now have True Sight, meaning within a certain
Yeah, Zeal, per turn is what he said. Per turn.
range, you can see anyone who's invisible.
What their actual form truly
Yes,
is.
you can see through illusions. Really powerful. We have another epic boon where when you take the attack action or the magic action, hey, you can also teleport. So you can see how these epic boons, once you reach level 19, can really supercharge how your character functions as they near the end of a normal D&D character's career. Now, I put it that way because we also include rules in the new player's handbook that if your DM wants you to keep playing at level 20, you can go beyond the power that characters normally have once they sort of reach the ceiling or reach the level cap. Because now, every time you hit a certain amount of XP, you can pick another one of these epic boon feats, or another feat if you so choose. Meaning if you play at level 20 long enough, you could conceivably get one of your scores all the way up to 30. Meaning that at that point, you are truly god tier.
Yeah, that's perfect. That's awesome.
So that's, again, I think what they're saying is that they're going to have like experience thresholds or however that's going to work. It's weird because not a lot of people use experience nowadays, but like if you continue playing at 20, like let's say you've capped out, it's kind of like whenever you like play in a video game and it like gives you another thing when you like would ding another level at max level, instead of getting like a new level, you just get like another benefit. And that's kind of what they're saying here, like get another epic boon at 20, like when you hit that, whatever that experience threshold is.
Awesome.
And again, that epic boon goodness is something that every character is going to have access to. Now with the fighter, I'm going to loop all the way back to the beginning before we dive into subclasses to touch also on some enhancements in existing features. I already mentioned that Second Wind now has more uses than it used to have.
Right.
But also the baseline fighting style feature that fighters get has been enhanced. And it's been enhanced in several ways. First off, there are new fighting style options that weren't present in 2014. There's now blind fighting, interception, thrown weapon fighting, and unarmed fighting.
These are all the ones, I think these were in Tasha's Cauldron, but they're now in the base player's handbook.
Each of these made their debut in Tasha's Cauldron of Everything, and they've now graduated into the player's handbook, and they have been adjusted to now be fully at home with all of the other options in this book. We've also improved the protection option that was present before, and you can also, and this is a biggie, you can also now change the fighting style that you chose every time you gain a fighter level.
That's huge, because every time you gain a fighter level, you could swap your fighting style for a different one. This is so great because it adds so much versatility. Like if you come across a cool weapon or a cool thing that you probably wouldn't normally use because your fighting style dictates you to be more of like a sword and shield paladin, like using dueling as opposed to like 2-weapon fighting or great weapon fighting, but you come across like a badass greatsword, maybe you want to change your whole mentality up, and you can do that once you level up.
It used to be that you would choose it and
That was it.
that was it for the rest of your career. We've now given the fighter the ability every time they level up to change their mind. They might decide, I've been more of an archer than a frontline warrior, and so I want to change what fighting style feat I'm using.
And that's something I also enjoy about Weapon Master as well, is that you mentioned several times that you can go through training drills and adjust.
Yes.
Yeah, you can train up on a different weapon, a different, yeah.
And that is a key piece of the fighter's weapon mastery feature. And the other weapon mastery features is exactly that. Yeah, that you pick the weapons that you unlock, but then you can change them.
Yeah.
And this is all about us giving players more ways to explore different parts of the game and not feel that they make a choice and they're stuck with it.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
Now, there are certain choices.
I also want to just point out for anybody who's commented or asked, this whole video has been at 1.25 times speed, and I don't think I could tell the difference.
That, yeah, they're for the character's life, unless something extraordinarily magical alters something. Like, for instance, most characters' species will never change, although, they might be reincarnated, and that could certainly change their species. Similarly, most characters never change their class, although they might delve into another class via multiclassing. But within some of these big choices that usually remain true throughout a character's career, we've looked for ways to give people more avenues to explore different options in the game. In a way, the fighter, to me, finally is truly the sort of weapon master equivalent of the wizard in terms of flexibility.
Absolutely, yeah.
The wizard, who is not actually our biggest damage dealer when it comes to spells, but the wizard has the most versatility when it comes to spells.
Yeah.
And fighters now have that kind of versatility with weapon use, with tactical options. But we've also made it so that you get to determine how deeply you go into the amount of choice, because that's a big part of your subclass decision. And
my take so far, Mr. Juicy Zero, I like it. I like it a lot. I've been kind of on board with most of the Unearthed Arcana changes we've seen so far. Notable exceptions including the lack of true identity for the Ranger and the Paladin changes to smiting. But for the most part, I'd say I'm pretty much on board with just about every change I've seen thus far.
And the 4 subclasses that are in the fighter represent not only 4 different thematic directions that a fighter can go in, but they also represent different levels of complexity, and in some ways, different levels of sort of mechanical idiosyncrasy. And this is something that we will return to when we talk about the other classes, because when we look at the classes, rather the subclasses that each class gets, and when we were choosing the 4 subclasses for every class in the new player's handbook, we were always looking for different levels of complexity, and then also different levels of idiosyncrasy, because we wanted to make sure that each subclass represented a different play style, a different theme, and a different level of complexity.
Let's delve into the subclasses. Fighter Battlemaster is one of my absolute favorites.
Art, once again, fantastic.
They have a complexity to them that makes you feel like kind of a wizard.
And that is an identity that we have protected in the revised Battlemaster. There was actually an early version of the revised fighter where we, and I know actually there are many 5e fans who expected us to do this.
Right.
Me being one.
We considered taking the Battlemaster and turning its maneuver system into the baseline for the whole class.
Right.
And we actually spent quite a bit of time several years ago assuming that was the direction we were going in with the fighter. We, as you can see, backed away from that.
Yeah.
And the main reason we did so is we realized that would undermine our goal of providing different levels of complexity for people and different play styles within the fighter. Because even though there are a segment of fans, you included, who love the Battlemaster, there are also many fighter players who have no interest in playing the Battlemaster or having this whole array of maneuvers to manage. In many ways, I'm glad for the Battlemaster's sake that we did not absorb it into the base class, because it allowed us to protect the Battlemaster as the Battlemaster. So a big part of bringing the Battlemaster...
I see both sides of this argument. I was one of the people who thought that that's what they were going to do. to kind of give the fighter its own uniqueness. Now, that I did not have any concept of weapon mastery being a thing at that point. That was something that kind of caught me, like, was unexpected and welcome, in my opinion. But I truly thought that they were going to just absorb Battlemaster maneuvers into base fighter. But you know what? I kind of see both sides of it. And honestly, if you want to be that much more tactical with Battlemaster now, you have that ability. And I think ultimately, I'm on the side of I'm glad they decided to keep it the way they did.
Into the new PH was making sure that the maneuvers were all functioning as well as they could, not only in the context of the fighter and the Battlemaster, but also in the context of other revisions we'd done in the game. But then we also added in new maneuvers. So if people thought there were a lot before, well, there are even more.
Yeah.
Because now you have ambush, bait and switch, commanding presence, and tactical assessment. These maneuver options debuted in Tasha's Cauldron of Everything, and we have brought them over now to the player's handbook.
That also seems to be a thing you'll see pretty often, is that if it was introduced in Tasha's Cauldron of Everything and it was a pretty well-respected and loved feature in that, it's now basically graduated to become baseline features in the player's handbook for 2024.
Join the other options within the Battlemaster.
And again, I always liked commanding presence because this, again, fleshed out, even though you are primarily, but maybe you could be a ranged or melee character, you have additional social options.
Exactly.
And that makes sense for that character. Like it fleshes out the character experience that you're having.
That non-combat angle is also a part of some other tweaks we made inside the Battlemaster. So in the Student of War feature, it used to be you got just a tool proficiency. Well, we now also allow you to get another skill proficiency from the fighter's skill list because we wanted the Battlemaster to feel more well-rounded. And because we imagine the Battlemaster as this sort of chess-playing tactical master who, yes, it's in the name, they are a master of battle, but also cunning and clever. And so that's why we added in that additional skill proficiency. We also completely redesigned the Battlemaster's Know Your Enemy feature.
Okay.
We wanted it to have clearer use in battle. And so now, when you use it, and you have a limited number of uses per day, but when you use it, you are able to discern a creature's immunities, resistances, and vulnerabilities. Essentially, it's in the name, you know your enemy. You size them up, and you're able to figure out the types of damage that's going to do nothing to them, but then also.
This is a more useful version of Know Your Enemy, knowing their resistances, immunities, all that stuff. I still don't love this feature. I feel like it's kind of a meh one, in my opinion. This version is better, knowing whether something's resistance to acid, cold, fire, lightning, bludgeoning, piercing, whatever. That kind of stuff is much more advantageous than, like, I want to know their strength score or whatever it used to be. But I still feel like these features don't ever hit home as useful as you want them to be. So I'm fine with it being here. I like the adjustments over the existing version, but a cooler other feature I wouldn't have been opposed to either.
Also, you're going to discern their weaknesses.
Perfect.
So the champion has still the same core identity as before, having a greater chance of scoring critical hits than pretty much anyone else in the game. But we really wanted to bring a bit more oomph to the subclass so that it would not only continue to be fun for the people who love its more streamlined playstyle, but also so that it might appeal to even those of us who often like a bunch of tactical options, which is one of the reasons why in our playtests I spent so much time myself playing a champion, because I wanted the champion to be at a place where I myself can say I had a great time playing it.
Right.
And I can say that wholeheartedly, that I had some of my most fun in the last year and a half.
The art, man. The art's so good.
In our playtesting playing a champion fighter. So weapon mastery with the champion is really like wonderful spice added to a tight, streamlined base. Again, we still wanted to make sure that the champion retained its streamlined nature while getting a little more spice of its own, not relying entirely on weapon mastery to bring that spice, but to get some of its own. And so with that in mind, we redesigned the Remarkable Athlete feature, and it now does a couple of things. First, combining with the champion's greater chance of scoring critical hits, Remarkable Athlete has made it so that whenever the champion scores a critical hit, the champion can move a certain distance without provoking opportunity attacks. So this
That's really
allows the
nice.
champion perhaps to score a crit and fell a target, and then without having to use any of their regular move, start making their way toward their next target,
Right.
or
really
move
nice.
to another tactically advantageous position on the battlefield. We've also made it so that Remarkable Athlete gives the champion advantage on strength athletics checks, but even better on initiative rolls. Because
This, well, I think they're going to explain it, but we'll talk
we
about
view
it.
the champion as being this person who is relentlessly pursuing victory, and they are ready to fight. And there are only a few characters in the player's handbook who have this, once they reach a certain level, an always-on advantage on initiative. And the champion is one, the assassin is another, and the rogue, and then the barbarian class all up eventually gets it. This ability is not only fantastic on its own, because it simply means you have a better chance of acting first, or at least sooner, in any battle that you're participating in, but it has an especially nice interaction with how surprise now works.
We're going to get to that in a second. But I just wanted to talk about how they made it, instead of like the weird half your proficiency bonus to like strength checks or strength dex con checks or whatever it was. Now it's just flat out advantage on strength checks, I think they said, and advantage on initiative rolls, which ultimately is kind of getting towards what it used to do. Like one of the best things about Remarkable Athlete was that you could boost your initiative with it. This makes a lot more sense now. It gives you that benefit. It gives you the advantage on the strength checks, which is good for shoving or grappling, which is ultimately what you're probably going to use that ability for in the long run. So again, a simple tweak, cleaner adjustment to the subclass to make it do what it wanted to do, but better. And that's another thing. We've seen it a lot in the Unearthed Arcana, and it sounds like we're going to see it here. That was the goal with this revision to 5e, was to take the stuff that was situational at best, or very, very limited usage, like brutal critical, right? We've talked about this in the past for the barbarian. It was like, if you crit, it does a cool thing, but then you have it does more damage in that aspect, right? Now, brutal critical is different. We'll talk about that more in depth when they get to the barbarian video in the next couple days here. But instead of it just being extra dice, which is good, don't get me wrong, but it's basically you're counting this on a 5% chance of you getting and rolling a natural 20 and getting that crit. So having it be something that you can apply more often, instead of locking down a couple levels of subclass or of class features to a very situational thing, it is now a much more active thing for you to do more damage and do other things. So I like that they've made a lot of these changes to allow you more access. Even things like just changing healing to do more healing with it. It helps more for you to passively want to preemptively heal rather than wait till somebody hits 0. Little tweaks to make things cleaner, simpler, rather than this whole having to remember that you add half of your proficiency bonus to these checks when you're probably just going to use it for initiative and strength checks. Just give them advantage on those checks and clean that up and remove that confusion out of the game entirely. But let's hear how they're going to change surprise.
Because the surprise rules in the new player's handbook have been changed. Rather than there being a potential for certain combatants to simply be unable to act during the first round of a fight, a possibility that frankly ended up really unbalancing the game in certain circumstances.
Very
because
true.
the old surprise rules could very easily trivialize an entire encounter,
100%.
and often way more so than they were intended to. It was really supposed to be sort of a narrative thing of, oh look, you got the jump on somebody, but causing another side to essentially spend the entire first round of a combat gawking would often mean, in some cases, why are we even having the fight? Like, the
That's
DM can
also
just say,
very
you
true.
won.
Yeah.
And so we wanted there still to be the possibility of feeling like you have an edge, but we needed to defang how powerful surprise was.
I'm waiting to hear what he says, but I 100% agree. How many of you, I know a lot of you are Baldur's Gate 3 fans, you know how much surprise can basically trivialize a fight. You get the drop on somebody, you get that free turn, you can almost end fights before they start if you're able to get the drop on somebody. And it goes both ways, right? Especially in D&D, right? If the enemies get a drop on you and you're surprised, that's it. Like, you could possibly lose your whole fight in that first turn, and depending on where you land in the initiative order, you might just get dropped because you didn't even get a chance to react because you were surprised. So I understand. I also like to hear that they originally was supposed to be like a narrative thing, like, hey, you got the drop on them, so you get to go first. But given the power level and things of certain abilities and classes, you can potentially just end the fight before it starts. So I'm very curious to see what these changes are.
And so in the new rules, being surprised simply means you have disadvantage on your initiative roll, meaning you are likely to go after the people who surprised you, although it's not guaranteed. The reason why I'm bringing this up in relation to the champion is it means because the champion always has advantage on their initiative rolls, even if they're surprised,
Right, yeah.
they still don't have disadvantage. It just means their advantage is canceled by the disadvantage, meaning the champion, the assassin, and the barbarian are really hard to surprise, which is exactly what we want. We want
So clean. Not like a huge, narrative shakeup. Could there be other benefits? Sure, but that obviously means the assassin's going to be drastically different, I imagine, with the auto crit they used to have on surprise. I imagine that's probably gone entirely. I have to look at what the most recent rogue in the Unearthed Arcana looks like to get an idea on that. But yeah, this is pretty simple. You're surprised, you have disadvantage on initiative. So chances are you're still going to go at the end of the round, although possibly not. And honestly, depending on what kind of fight you're in, going at the end of the round might be just as much as not going at all, depending on how stacked the enemies are. But also, like they said, to have... that also means you can free up, like, the fact that the barbarian could go into a rage to not be surprised. Well, now they just have advantage on initiative rolls. So they kind of cancel out the surprise by just having a straight roll anyway. Very simple, very clean. And I like it. The champion, the assassin, and the barbarian, classes or subclasses that are supposed to be very good at fighting or getting the drop on folks, they're harder to surprise just outright, which I also think means that probably alert is going to be a similar thing. Like, you don't have disadvantage on attack roll or initiative rolls when surprised or something like that. And that's just probably how alert works. Or maybe alert as the feat just gives you advantage on initiative rolls, and then now that kind of makes you in line with those classes that have advantage, allowing you to almost cancel out surprise. Again, maybe some people are still going to want to play with the old surprise rules, and that's fine. I think we're all at the point now, I've said this before, we're 10 years into 5e. Nobody is playing base 5e, base 2014 5e anymore. Everybody's got their own homebrew version of the game that they play at their table, whether it's heavily modified, like some games that I'm in, or just like a slight little tweaks here and there where you've got maybe 5 to 10 homebrew rules that you apply at your table, or whatever the case may be. I think this is a nice little update, and I think I'll probably end up running my games like this because... and again, I think that's another instance where we're talking about different editions of rules. Implementing that rule now, which is, again, why we talked a little bit about the 2014, 2024 stuff, where things will be a little weird. So now, if you were to adopt that surprise mechanic to your existing 2014 game, it might be a little weird because of the way certain subclasses interact with surprise, like the champion. Like the assassin. So if you were to play a 2014 assassin in 2024, it might be better because all it is the surprise is just disadvantage on the attack. So you can see how there can be issues where if you're playing with the 2024 rule set with a 2014 class, things can be wonky. So that kind of helps illustrate that a little bit, I think.
These characters to
always be ready.
They are ready.
Yeah.
They are ready to fight.
Yeah.
Or in the case of the assassin, they're ready to get you.
Yeah. They don't want this. They don't want.
No Kingdom Hearts. Honestly, I've just been playing Destiny 2 because the final shape is fantastic. So no, I haven't been playing Kingdom Hearts recently, but I could definitely see why you would think that.
a fight. They want to end the fight.
Yeah, the assassin wants the fight to end before it even
Oh,
starts.
right, it's already over. Yeah.
So there are some other enhancements in the champion. The additional fighting style feature that used to be at level 10 has moved down to level...
We can kind of, you see that? We can kind of like, here's improved critical, here's remarkable athlete at level 3. Additional fighting style, looks like it's 7. Something warrior at 10. Supreme critical was at 15. We can kind of almost read through it.
Level 7. And then at level 10, there's now a brand new feature. It's called Heroic Warrior.
Heroic Warrior, there it is.
And every time the champion starts their turn in combat and doesn't have heroic inspiration, they get it automatically.
Oh, wow.
What? Oh my god. Champion Fighter is so good? Okay. If you missed the live stream yesterday, heroic inspiration is the new term for what used to just be called inspiration in 5e, which is like where the DM could dole it out to people if they like did a cool thing or said a funny thing. Heroic inspiration now in 5e allows you to, it's not advantage on a roll, it's a re-roll. So even if you make that roll with disadvantage or you make that roll with advantage, it is a re-roll. Here's the thing, it's a re-roll of any die roll. So it could re-roll initiative, it could re-roll damage, whatever the case may be. So reminder that at this point, our champion has advantage on initiative rolls. They have advantage on strength saving throws. They crit on a 19 to 20. Now at level 10, whenever they start their turn without heroic inspiration, they get heroic inspiration, which means they have an automatic reroll in combat every single turn, whether or not, if they've use it. You're gonna burn it every turn. There's no reason not to, because next turn you're gonna get it again. Whether this is to reroll your damage or your saving throw or what have you, heroic inspiration every turn. Not to mention that when you hit 13, if you miss with an attack roll, you're also gonna get advantage on the next attack. Think about all of these things in concert and how wild that is.
And remember, the new heroic inspiration lets you re-roll any die roll. So the champion could use this to re-roll their d20 roll in the hope of fishing for crits, but they could also use it to re-roll a damage die or some other die that they're using on their turn. What this means is that a champion, every turn in combat, has a re-roll in their pocket, which...
Okay. You might be saying this sounds really good. Think about the number of people you actually had play champion fighters at your table. Not a lot. That I like the concept that they're bringing here too is that the subclasses have varying degrees of difficulty. So if you want to play like a super simplistic character, champion fighter is for you. It is the guy who hits stuff, and it is very baseline, a lot of passive, simple mechanics, right? Advantage on this, reroll once a turn. These are the things you have. Battlemaster, a little bit more improved, right? You've got the maneuver concept. Eldritch Knight, now you've got magic. Psi-Knight, you're dealing with psionics. And you think about something like a Berserker Barbarian, right? You just get to hit more times, whereas having different aspects of different parts of the different barbarians might be more advanced. Life Cleric, I'm just good at healing. War Cleric, I hit stuff. And so, you know, different aspects of like tiers of difficulty in the subclasses is a pretty interesting concept to allow you. I don't think they're going to come out and say that anywhere, like tier levels of difficulty for the classes. Although I probably would, honestly, if I was WotC, say like difficulty tier 1 is champion fighter and like list them all so that people, the only problem is when you start listing difficulty tiers, you might automatically turn people off from playing. Maybe we'll do this as fans after the fact. Once the book is out, we can do these rankings to put them out there for people. But once you codify these things officially in the book, you start losing people will not want to play difficulty 4 because of a perceived difficulty there. But maybe we'll do that, you know, for on our end. But yeah.
Again, simple,
Yeah.
but potentially very effective. Finally, their level 18 feature, Survivor, Now, in addition to its other functions that it had before, also gives the champion advantage on death saving throws, and they essentially gain their expanded crit range that they have on attack rolls also on death saves. And here's what I mean by that. Now, when they're making death saving throws, if they roll an 18, 19, or 20, when they have this survivor feature, they gain the benefit of having rolled a 20. They basically, they can roll a critical death saving throw with a bigger range, since that's also their theme with their attack rolls.
Again, a really simple update that is just so fitting with what you're trying to design for the character. They have expanded crit range for their attacks. They have expanded crit range for death saving throws. I honestly am surprised they didn't end up getting like expanded. Well, the thing is, there is no crits on saving throws or skill checks, so that's why. The only things that get critical successes are death saving throws and attacks. So they have that expanded to be 18, 19, 20. If you're playing at a table where the DM allows a 20 to be an auto success on a saving throw or a skill check, I'd ask them to say, like, well, based on what they've talked about for the champion, can I also have auto success on 18, 19, or 20 at a certain point? If you're going to make skill checks and saving throws auto success on 20, that a champion fighter should also have that ability, in my opinion. But because the things that only have auto success are death save, or crit success or death saves and attacks, makes sense that they have the expanded range for those, which is pretty cool.
Meaning it is really hard to keep a champion down.
And what does a critical death saving throw do?
So when you roll a 20 on a death saving throw, you gain a hit point, which means you stop dying.
Yeah.
So that's the best thing that can happen to you, because that erases all of the death saving throw failures you might have accrued up to that point, and then you have the potential to get back into the fight.
Lots of people want to play a fighter, a lot of people want to play a wizard, but there's always been something like, I want a little bit of magic with me having a sword, having a longbow, just a little touch of magic, and that's what the Eldritch Knight gives you.
Yeah, and the Eldritch Knight is tapping into that exactly. It's meant to be not only there for the person who wants the fighter mage, but maybe even for somebody who played original D&D where elf was a class option that mixed spellcasting and martial ability, and that is exactly what the Eldritch Knight is. The Eldritch Knight retains, its core abilities from 2014, the spellcasting combined with the abilities of the fighter, and the Eldritch Knight in the quartet of classes, rather subclasses in the fighter, is the first of two, the other one being the Psy Warrior, that are for people who want the fighter mixed with something else.
Yeah.
So the champion and the battle master, they represent sort of the core fighter, but at different ends of the complexity spectrum.
This is what we were just talking about.
The Eldritch Knight and the Psy Warrior, they're instead on a different axis. They're about taking the core shtick of the fighter and combining it with, in the case of the Eldritch Knight, spellcasting, and in the case of the Psy Warrior, psionic power. And they give you two very different routes to follow, also mechanically, because the Eldritch Knight relies on spells mechanically, while the Psy Warrior relies on psionic energy dice and using unique abilities that are built into the Psy Warrior subclass. Now, in the Eldritch Knight, we've made several enhancements to take this popular subclass and make it even better. So one of the things that people will notice right away if they've played the Eldritch Knight before is we no longer have any School of Magic restrictions in the Eldritch Knight.
That's very nice.
The Eldritch Knight, as well as the Rogue's Arcane Trickster subclass, used to have School of Magic restrictions in them when it came to your spell selection, and we have removed the restrictions from both of those subclasses.
Great.
Because we wanted you to have more freedom to build the type of warrior mage you wanted to build with the Eldritch Knight, or in the case of the Arcane Trickster, the type of rogue mage that you wanted to create. The Eldritch Knight also is helpful for the person who maybe does not want to dive into multi-classing, but again wants a little bit of the chocolate mixed with their peanut butter.
Right.
That is the warrior mage. Now, in addition to that, we've also
very nice.
Given the Eldritch Knight the ability to use an arcane focus.
Simple.
A detail that was missing in 2014.
Streamlined is another word I would use to describe these updates. Keeping everything nice, smoothing out the bumps, making everything nice and simple, easy to understand. If 5e was easy for people to understand back then, this new remastered kind of version here for 2024 is even more so.
Then we've redesigned both War Magic and Improved War Magic. Previously, War Magic relied on you taking a bonus action to gain its benefit.
Bad.
Instead, you can now, with War Magic, take the attack action and replace one of your attacks with casting a cantrip.
This was the thing they updated for Blade Singer, and it is so much better now for fighters. Oh my god, so much better. What a big, powerful change. Replace one of your attacks with a cantrip. That is phenomenal. Now, I don't know, and I don't believe, we haven't heard anything, whether things like Green Flame Blade or Booming Blade or those spells have made their way into the 2024 Player's Handbook. But obviously that would be like the go-to run, right? Strike once with one weapon attack, or strike once with Green Flame Blade or one of those more powerful cantrips to do a bunch of damage, and then follow up with regular attacks, but you're not burning through your turn. Plus, that still frees your bonus action for things like Misty Step or other kinds of spells. Also, Chill Touch is now a touch-based spell that does necrotic damage. I believe we saw that in one of the Unearthed Arcanas as well. There was like the Bastion and Cantrips one, I think it was. All right, so like, or Shocking Grasp, whatever. You could do cool things and like deal extra damage just because of the way cantrips scale, and then also do attacks. It's such a nice little adjustment that also makes it so you don't lose your turn. And you could do wild things, like if you paired this with a Dragonborn and you had 3 attacks, you could do a cantrip, breath weapon, sword strike, which would be wild.
And then Improved War Magic, which also now does not rely on a bonus action, now lets you, when you take the attack action, replace 2 of your attacks to cast a level 1 or level 2 spell. So
even better, right? So now Improved War Magic comes at a point where you have 3 attacks already. Ditch 2 of your attacks to cast a level 1 or level 2 spell. And still have at least 1 attack, not including things like Action Surge. Also, you might be the best... Oh, wait a minute. You might be the best multi-turn spellcaster out there. Huh. Better than a wizard. Oh. Oh, okay. So listen, think about this. They changed Action Surge in the Unearthed Arcana to be, you can use it, you can get an additional action for anything but the magic action, right? Which, if you recall, the magic action is what they call casting a spell, right? So you're not casting a spell as an action, you're taking the magic action, right? That's casting a spell. So Action Surge states you can't take, you can use Action Surge to get an additional action for anything but the magic action. Basically negating the thing that a lot of us would do, where you take 18 levels in a spellcasting class and 2 levels in fighter, so you can cast a spell, Action Surge, another spell. They recognize fully that that's how things work in 2014. They did not want to perpetuate that forward into 2024, so they tweaked Action Surge to no longer do that. Which I get. But because Improved War Magic Fighter isn't taking the magic action, you are replacing 2 of your attacks with a level 1 or 2 spell. You could, as people are saying, at level 20, when you have 4 attacks, cast 2 level 2 spells on a turn. You could cast a level 2 spell, attack, then Action Surge, cast another level 2 spell, and attack. You're the only class that would allow you, in theory, to cast multiple level spells on a turn, because you're replacing your attack action attacks with casting a spell, not taking the magic action, which is a pretty cool little thing that the fighter gets to do if this works as I'm interpreting it in my head. But I also kind of like that. Like, the wizard can do all these really powerful spells. You have accomplished the tactical mindset of the fighter with a little bit of wizard magic, so you're able to kind of mix and match those 2 concepts together only because of the way you've combined martial and magic together.
what this does is even better integrate the 2 parts of the Eldritch Knight's identity, their fighterliness and their spellcasting abilities, by taking the spellcasting abilities and really allowing them to take advantage of one of the fighter's main features relative to anyone else in the game, and that is simply the number of attacks that fighters get, because fighters, with their extra attack feature, gain more attacks than anyone else in the game. The one exception being the monk. The monk does not get all their extra attacks through extra attack. Instead, it's through various unarmed strike shenanigans with their bonus action. And of course, it's the good kind of shenanigans. So this allows, in the Eldritch Knight, the ability for the fighter to integrate their spellcasting into the regular attack routine, and then frees up their bonus action for other uses.
Right.
So that
Second wind
it isn't
even.
being devoured by their subclass's main shtick.
That's what's new with Eldritch Knight. Let's talk about the Psy Warrior.
So the Psy Warrior,
This is one that I'll be honest, I probably am the least knowledgeable about. I remember when it came out, I read it, I liked it, but I have not done a lot of research on the Psy Knight from Tasha's Cauldron. I just never really messed around with it much. Again, probably that concept of what we talked about me not wanting to play a fighter. So this, I'm basically going to be taking this at face value here as it's being described as essentially my only version of the Psy Knight or Psy Warrior.
first appeared in Tasha's Cauldron of Everything, and is a way for you to take the fighter foundation and add to it this character who manipulates the battlefield with the powers of their mind. And this includes various telekinetic abilities, being able to hurl things around with your mind, as well as defensive capabilities, all of which is handled by using psionic energy dice that represent your character's psionic energy. And
I kind of also want to say that I like psionic energy dice more than psi points, which was like the older system for psionics in older editions, and even the early uses of the mystic when that was coming out in Unearthed Arcana. So anyway, just throwing that out there.
the subclass, for anyone who has played it before, will feel very similar. And the main changes that we've made to it in integrating it into the new Player's Handbook has largely been to just reword things, reframe some things so that it fits naturally in the context of the new rulebook and in the context of the broader fighter class.
So you've given the fighter a lot of new things.
Yes.
Some dramatic improvements and changes, and a lot more to do. That's fantastic.
The new Player's Handbook is available for pre-order right now.
All right. We finally, after an hour and a half, made it through this 20-minute fighter video. But, I mean,
On D&D Beyond, you can
who
find
can
that.
say you expected anything different from me when it came to this? So, yeah, there you go, folks. That is the fighter mixed in with a bunch of commentary about the game, as many of you brought up here. I might try to cut out just the fighter concept into one separate video. Who knows? But yeah, I like a lot of these changes. I think a lot of them are really sweet. Like I said, I've never wanted to play a fighter before. Now I do. And even champion fighter seems like it could be a really fun option. You get like a really cool weapon going. You could have a lot of fun. Also, I'm very washed out because I'm wearing a white shirt and I want to apologize for that. But yeah, they didn't really give us much about the Psy Knight at all. But basically, it sounds like they're keeping it almost identical to what we saw in Tasha's Cauldron with a couple of like probably changes to the wording of things to make them a little clearer. But yeah, we are definitely going to make a separate video on just like the 2024-2014 interactions. Again, based on what we've heard from yesterday and a little bit of today, what you're replacing, what you're allowed to keep, how things are going to work, and kind of give you my thoughts on that going forward. We're definitely going to do that. We're going to, again, continue to do these live streams every day that I'm able to. I'm going to do a live stream every day, it sounds like, for the foreseeable future. It just depends on when I'm able to do it. This week, things are a little bit light for me, so I'm probably going to be able to do it on tomorrow, like around the same time, close to the release of the video. Same thing with Friday. But then other days, it may be difficult. It might not be a live stream till later on in the evening. Where like when I'm off of work or things, if I have to go into the office, it'll kind of chew things up a little bit, make things a little more difficult. And then again, at some points, I think I'm going to be on vacation, so I might be depending on the vacation situations, doing them from a different location. But the goal is to try to complete at least a live stream, live review of these every day with you all, where we watch these videos together, as well as sprinkled in other content in between, whether that's dissected up versions of these videos into specific videos, or also kind of standalone that make things a little bit easier to understand. So we're going to go through these, and then obviously, like I said, once the book is officially out for everybody, we're going to have in-depth breakdowns of each class, subclass, different aspects of the player's handbook. And then again, we'll also start releasing our sort of updating. If you guys have good ideas for a name, feel free to drop this in the description as well. For like what we're going to call the series, where we take the older things that weren't brought into 2024, like all of the subclasses that they didn't update into from the 2014 Player's Handbook to 2024, whether that's things like the Necromancer Wizard, the Tempest domain, the Nature domain, the Knowledge domain, stuff from other books, Arcana domain, Battle Rager, Blade Singer, Sun Soul Monk, Long Death Monk, all these ones that have kind of didn't make the transition to the 2024 Player's Handbook. We're going to start a series after this book releases of updating each of those to try to be in line with the new subclasses from 2024. But I need a name for that series. So you guys throw out comments here in the live stream. I see a couple coming up too as well. Feel free to throw them as comments on the video. I'll take the ones with the most. I'm going to say thank you all for everybody who's throwing the stuff in the chat right now. What I'll have you do is when I end this live stream, comment those here on the video as well. Whichever get the ones that get the most likes, those comments that get the most likes, I will compile them into a poll here on the channel, and we'll have everybody vote for which one they like the best. Ted's Guide to Everything is great. What's Old is New, Revising 2014, Up to Speeds, Reborn, Retrains, TED Time. All these are great. Take those, throw them as comments when this video ends. The ones with the most likes will get compiled into a poll, and you all will vote for the name of that series. So thank you all so much for watching. Hope you're all staying cool out there. It is almost 100 degrees here where I'm at. It's just way too hot for this early in June. So I'm going to go just veg out for a little while, and then maybe finally get this new PC fully installed and take this one down. So anyway, thank you all so much for watching. I'll see you all next time.